I had no idea what the Blue Ridge Parkway was, but apparently it's a long road that connects Shenandoah to other parks. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Between Two Parks.
Yay!
In the Georgia pines, I needed work. I didn't care what kind. My trouble starts when the whistle blows.
So, the last time you saw us, I believe, we had just survived a chainsaw murder scene. It's kind of funny to laugh about now. We were both nervous. I was nervous we were going to be attacked by a bear. Sandy was nervous that we were going to be encountered by an axe murderer, but we survived. And we kept going on our trip, even though that was a crazy first night. After that, we hooked back up and we took off to Shenandoah, and we went for a little hike. It was a crazy hike. It was hot and uphill and downhill, and had some good scenery, and we enjoyed that. So after leaving Shenandoah, we decided to take the Blue Ridge Parkway to our next park.
It was very convenient because the Blue Ridge Parkway is located right outside of Shenandoah off of Skyline Drive, which we had just been touring and driving along. So as soon as we exited Shenandoah, there was a bright gray sign with blue and white letters that said the Blue Ridge Parkway. So it was really easy to just pop on and start driving 45 miles an hour, pulling the camper behind us, which was, what kind of experience would you say that was?
On the Blue Ridge Parkway, it was fine. The Blue Ridge Parkway starts at Shenandoah.
Yes.
And it ends where?
The Great Smoky Mountain National Park. So it's 469 miles. We started at mile 1 and drove to mile 40 or something like that. Then we got off and took the highway for a little while, got back on in Virginia.
We stayed at this little campsite run by the National Park Service. I think it was designed so you can stay there for a night or two while you're traveling the parkway. Didn't have a ton of amenities, but I think that's not really necessary. If you're traveling the parkway, you're just kind of there for a night or two, kind of a transient spot. So the Blue Ridge Parkway, when did it start?
So the Blue Ridge Parkway was an endeavor that came out of the Great Depression. Franklin Delano Roosevelt visited the Skyline Drive in the 1930s, and he really liked what he saw. And along with some other people, they had this idea to come up with a road that would connect Shenandoah or the Skyline Drive with Great Smoky Mountain National Park. And so to FDR, this was really great because he needed to come up with a way to employ people and to put money back into the American economy because it's at the height of the Great Depression. We're also experiencing a flux in cars, people having cars that they like to drive and that they want to take on trips with them. And so the parkway kind of came at this moment when we needed to employ people to get money back into the economy. And we had all these excellent cars that we wanted to drive. And so the parkway seemed like a really great idea. And it was a very, very ambitious project. It had a lot of people coming together.
And everybody loved it?
No, everybody did not love the idea of the parkway because the parkway was so long, over 400 miles. Ultimately, the parkway ends up incorporating 20,000 acres of land. People did not love this idea because where does this land come from? Well, it comes from a lot of people who already owned it. Small farmers, landowners, people who had houses there. And the Blue Ridge Parkway was proposing to come through and take that land through eminent domain.
Right, we saw a lot of farms butting up to the parkway.
Right.
We stopped at a mill for breakfast. It was a live mill. I believe it had fallen into some disrepair, and they must have easily taken it over after that.
So Mabry's Mill for breakfast is
they say it's one of the most photographed parts of the Blue Ridge Parkway. Good pancakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the route of the Blue Ridge Parkway was also disputed in some towns saying, well, why aren't you coming through our town? Why aren't you promoting us? Asheville, North Carolina is an example of this. they were very insistent that the Blue Ridge Parkway come through their city. They were suffering under the Great Depression, as were a lot of towns, but they were going bankrupt, and they felt that if the parkway didn't come through there, help them revitalize their tourism, then the city wouldn't survive.
So did it?
Yeah, so they were able to convince the planners to bring the town through.
So who built the parkway? Who were the workers that were employed to build these?
So the parkway was built by the Civilian Conservation Corps, members of the Works Progress Administration, contracted highwaymen, but also if you drive the parkway, you'll see these beautiful bridges with stonework. And a lot of that stonework was done by Italian immigrants. A little bit of an old world feel there, certainly, as you're traveling on the parkway.
So it probably took just a couple years to develop the parkway.
It was done in 2 years.
2 years? Wow.
Just kidding. So by World War II, about half of the parkway had been completed. And when World War II broke out, resources and men, builders were needed for the war effort. So it really paused the parkway's construction. But prior to that, having half of the parkway be completed is pretty impressive in that the parts of the parkway were just paths, rutted paths that were almost impossible to get construction equipment up. So the fact that it was half completed was pretty impressive. In the 1950s, the National Park Service came out with this program called Mission 66, which was intended to really promote the parks, to help build the parks, grow the parks, because after World War II, you had a lot of soldiers coming home, you had a post-war economic boom, so a lot of people were looking to spend money in leisure time and travel, and so the parks were getting overrun with a lot of cars, a lot of people, and they just didn't have the infrastructure to support it. The Blue Ridge Parkway, their effort, or their part of the Mission 66 was to actually complete it within that 10-year time period. So
did it happen?
It did not happen totally that the parkway was completed, but it did, a lot of the parkway was put in during that 10-year time period. So it became longer for sure. One of the things holding up the completion of the parkway is a place called Grandfather Mountain. A man owns Grandfather Mountain, and he does not want the parkway to come through. Now, common stories will say that he was really concerned about the ecological sensitivity of Grandfather Mountain, and that's why he single-handedly stopped the National Park Service from coming through. This is not entirely true. He did later say a lot of this stuff to kind of create this story, but if you look at the records and look at the historical documents, what really was going on was he had come back after World War II, and he had owned a lot of the land around Grandfather Mountain, or his father had, and he inherited that land, and he began developing it. And one of his main frustrations with the National Park Service was that he felt like the landowners and the businessmen surrounding Blue Ridge Parkway weren't getting enough recognition and remuneration for their efforts. So they weren't making enough money. And during this time, he was running a lot of sideshows where people could go to the top of Grandfather Mountain. There was a shop up there called the Top Shop where they could go and spend money on souvenirs and trinkets. He had like a ropes course and things like that that people could spend money on. He charged people to go up the mountain. So he was making money off of it, and I think he felt a little bit threatened by the National Park Service coming in and possibly taking that business away from him. They ultimately put in a viaduct that was 7.5 miles long. Well, the viaduct was not 7.5 miles long, but it was 7.5 mile stretch that then, facilitated by the viaduct, the Blue Ridge Parkway was completed, finally.
Wow. Very cool. So what do you think your biggest takeaways are from the parkway? Were you impressed? Were you not impressed?
Yeah, so I have two things there. My biggest takeaway from the parkway is just the beauty in its design. And one of the things that I discovered when reading a little bit more about the parkway was that there was a designer named Stanley Abbott. Stanley Abbott was really influenced by Olmsted, and how Olmsted believed that landscape architecture should really reflect the place in which the landscape was centered. And so Abbott wanted to create a park within a park. Where people could go and explore via car, just looking out their windshields, these parks, and they would reflect the natural area. So he wanted to portray the parks, the spice of the parkway. He wanted to show their variety. And he would use examples, from music, and he would call the highs and lows of the parkway the fortissimo and the pianissimo, and he would say all this to help describe what he was envisioning as the rhythm of the road that the driver would experience as they went up and down and around the curves, and really experience the music of the highway.
Yeah, it's definitely true. I mean, the road is majestic on a lot of parts. It's very beautiful. You just pop out and you see this beautiful, breathtaking scenery, and then you kind of duck back into the woods all at the same time. It definitely seems like nature has purposely put stuff there. And keep in mind, if you guys go, you will be in nature, and you will see fallen trees. We encountered 2 of them on the parkway by themselves.
2 additional fallen trees since our first fallen tree.
Right, so we're up to 3 now altogether. But it was pretty cool. People just jumped out of their car, and they were fortunately small trees, and there was like 12 of us, and we dragged them to the side. One kid had a hatchet and he's whacking at it. People kind of coming together on the Blue Ridge Parkway. What was your highlight of the trip?
I don't know. I think my highlight was just the swooping roads, the experience of driving. It was pretty impressive. I really liked it. I mean, I didn't drive, you drove. The experience of riding, I think was really great. It was nice to think about how this is part of the national park system, but it's only at times 200 feet wide across. Sometimes larger, but I mean, it's just this narrow strip of land that the National Park Service is kind of overseeing, so it's very interesting. As
the driver, sometimes that felt 5 feet across. And my highlight was the pancakes. You can go down to Mayberry Mills and get pancakes, and they serve them 7 days a week, all the time, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, so they were good pancakes.
Yeah, I think my biggest regret is that we did not do much with the bluegrass music scene. One town we did stop in, Floyd, Virginia, is quite known for its bluegrass, but on Friday nights they have a big bluegrass jamboree, but we were there on, I think, a Monday. Yeah. So we totally missed it, which was too bad. That's my biggest regret, I think.
Floyd seemed like a really cool small town, and everyone we talked to said it was just awesome there. We were definitely a day late and $1 short, or even an hour short. There was a really cool looking general store that That's where
the bluegrass is, at the general store.
Oh man! Well, I was dying to go into the general store, and we had to get some other stuff first in town. And I pulled up to the general store, and they closed like 5 minutes ago. So next time we're going through Floyd, we're gonna go through on a Friday night, and we're gonna get ready to listen to some bluegrass at the general store. So that would be pretty cool next time when we make it here. So, anything else we need to know about the national park?
There's probably lots to know, but that's all we have for you.
Very good. So, Blue Ridge Parkway, go explore it. Great for motorcycle, RV, whatever. Next time,
motorcycle.
Maybe. Next time, motorcycle. Until next time, we are between 2 parks.
We're always between 2 parks.
I left my home in the Georgia pines. I needed work. I didn't care what kind. My trouble starts when the whistle blows. It's a sad short life, way down in a hole. 12 tons of gold on a big iron sled. I work all day for a cold hard bed. Now heaven knows where heaven lies. There ain't no gold